I can't believe it's week 16 in the Read What You Own challenge already. What have I been reading? Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and I am a co-host for the Read What You Own challenge, 4th year. This is an event created by Criminali. The other two co-hosts are MJ at Reading This Life and Crystal at Fiber Artsy. This started off as a 100 book challenge in year 1, where Criminali was challenging himself to read 100 books that he already owned before buying another book. Fools like myself joined in. Over the years, it has morphed and the rules have changed a little bit. You now have tiers where you can read 100 books, 75 books, 50 books, or 25 books. And in the 4th year, we're adding a page count where you don't have to read a certain number of books. You just have to read a certain number of pages before you get to buy another book. There are some exceptions. I will post a link to my video describing the entire rules for this challenge and my few exceptions. I am reading 25,000 pages before I can buy another book. And what did I read this week? I started off with the audiobook The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat by Oliver Sacks. Sacks is a British neuroscientist who studies the mind and the brain, and this is his tales of clinical events in patients that he encountered over the year. I read this for part of a group that is going to be hosted by Gareth at Books, Songs, and Other Magic. Look for a live show sometime in March. And the tales that Oliver Sacks tells about the brain, about the mind, is really fascinating. This noodle inside our skull is something fabulous. It is something mysterious. There's a lot of clinical stories of what Sacks encountered. Some of them are really rather curious. I'll just tell you one. He was examining two young men who were considered mentally disabled, I guess, idiot savants, passively. They couldn't quite function in normal society together. They were twins, I think, or brothers. I can't quite remember. But they had this remarkable ability to calculate prime numbers. And I can't calculate prime numbers myself. I am no math whiz. Oliver Sacks himself says he's not that good with prime numbers. But these young men could come up with 6-digit prime numbers just off the top of their head. One boy would come up with a number, which was a prime number, and a little while later the other one would come up with a different prime number. And they'd just exchange prime numbers back and forth like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And when Oliver Sacks joined in, he got a book of prime numbers because he couldn't do it. And he threw out a 6-digit prime number, and they joined in. They threw out their own 6-digit prime numbers. Then Oliver Sacks started looking in his book and started giving them larger prime numbers, greater than 6 digits. If I am not mistaken, they got up to 20-digit prime numbers where the book ended. And believe me, it would take a computer for most human beings to do that. But these boys had no problem with it. They couldn't function in society by themselves very well, but they could come up with prime numbers. For various reasons, it was decided to split these two young men up, and afterwards, they lost their ability to calculate prime numbers. A fascinating book, and I'm looking forward to the discussion with Gareth and a few other people. The Widow by Jorge Simenon. He is more famously known for his Maigret series of police procedural novels, but this is a straight-out crime novel. It was published and written about the same time as Camus wrote The Stranger. And this one starts off with a man who has been released from prison, and he's traveling through France. He's getting away, and he stops off at a farm where there is a widow. She's relatively young, relatively pretty, I guess. And of course, this is going to evolve into a crime story. And of course, murder will be necessary. I liked it. It has a very small, slow pace to it, but it builds up. You can feel the criminal's mind, not sure of what he's going to do and what's going to happen. A fairly decent crime novel. The Passion, according to G.H. by Clarice Lispector. She is one of Brazil's most famous authors. And this book is just freaking fantastic. It's not like most novels. There is one character in this book that is the cult sculptress, G.H. She is living in her apartment somewhere in Brazil, presumably. She lives alone, but there was a maid's room where she used to have a maid. And she walks into this maid's room one day after being away from like 6 weeks, something like that. And it's all clean and pristine. There's no sign that there was ever a human inhabiting that room. Even, of course, there was a maid there previously. And then G.H. spots a cockroach. And this cockroach throws her into an existential crisis of sorts. This book is her thoughts, her opinions, her musings of life, nature, on gods, and cockroaches. Do not look at this book for a plot. There is no plot in this book. This is all the musings of a woman disturbed by the universe upon seeing a cockroach. Now, there is a little bit more to it than just that, because something happens to this cockroach, and that further excels this existential crisis. And this book contains what many people call the most disturbing scene in Brazilian or Portuguese literature. I won't tell you what that is, but you really should experience this book for yourself if you are willing to go through a novel about thoughts, about philosophy, and whatnot. I can highly recommend this. This was a reread for me, and I think this book was more mind-blowing the second time around, and maybe I understood it less because I understood there was more depth to this novel than the first time. Pick this up. Really, I think the right kind of person will truly enjoy it. Ariadne by Jennifer Saimt. Jennifer Saimt studied classics at King's College in London. She is fascinated with Greek mythology. If you are not familiar with the story of Ariadne, she is the daughter of Minos and Crete. Crete was more famously known for having the labyrinth and the Minotaur. The Minotaur was her brother, and every year King Minos summoned the youth of Athens to come to Crete to be food for the Minotaur. Ariadne was quite mortified about this, but she had no way to stop it until one day this boy, this man named Theseus arrived, and she plotted with her sister Phaedra to get Theseus to kill the Minotaur. She provided Theseus with the ball of yarn, which would allow him to escape or retrace his footsteps in the labyrinth. Now, that is the main part of Greek mythology that I know, and it is only a very small part of this novel, because mostly what Jennifer Saimt was wanting to think about was women in Greek mythology. Women don't normally feature very heavily in Greek mythology, and she wanted to present women as characters in their own right and to be the center of the story. So I'm not absolutely positive the latter halves of this book follow the traditional Greek myths all that much, but it does present women in ancient Greece, the mythology, presented as fully formed women, strong characters. I think this novel would appeal to women more than men, even though I did enjoy this book a lot. It was a good book. I will probably seek out more books by Jennifer Saimt when I find the time. This book was also a gift from a viewer of my channel named Lee. Thank you again for sending me this novel. I am going to be returning the favor and sending this book off to someone else. If that person decides they don't want it, I'm going to stick this in a little free library somewhere in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So maybe you'll find it and pick it up and read it. If you can't find this copy, get one of your own. Here's a novel you're not likely to see reviewed on BookTube very often. Un Semaine de Bonte by Max Ernst. The subtitle is A Surrealistic Novel in Collage. And this is not your normal novel. There really are no words in this book. It is all collages created by Max Ernst. He was a surrealist author. And I will show you some of the pictures that you can see in here. That one. That one. Now I do have to be careful which pictures I show here because sometimes Max Ernst, being a European of the 1930s, showed women with less than full clothing, and the YouTube algorithm would not appreciate me showing you that. There's no real story involved in this book. It's just collage paintings that are very surrealistic. Here you see a woman with wings. There's a man peeking around the door. If you look carefully right there, there's some sort of lizard or dragon with her. And you get those kinds of pictures. There are humanoids with bird-like heads and such oddities. So, what is that woman wearing on her head? Is that a wig? Is that some sort of fruit basket? I don't know. But it's really weird. And I loved it. There are I'm sorry. There are a few words in here, introductions to the chapters, where you can see the original is in French right there that came in the book. And on the next page, you will see an English translation for poor schmoes like me who can only read a few words of French. So if you want to experiment with a surrealistic story, pick up this surrealistic novel by Max Ernst. You can read it in an hour or two, or you can spend a lot more time viewing each collage very carefully. Either way is fine. Give it a try.
Oh my gosh, the turtles, yeah. So low, it's cool.
I have been continuing with my reading projects. The first is In Search of Lost Time, where I'm going to be reading the 4,000 plus pages by Marcel Proust in the year 2025. I have a Discord channel. There are some interesting conversations there, But I find Proust hard to discuss because it's an experience to read Proust, and it doesn't translate well for me, taking what I gather in from the story and putting it back out on Discord. I find that difficult. Other people are a little bit better at it than I. I unfortunately am not a great group discussion leader, so the discussions on Discord are kind of light. But I have finished the first volume, Swann's Way, and started in the second, Within a Budding Grove. I am also reading The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. I am right now reading the Michael Katz translation. I have just finished book 5, which is sort of the philosophical heart of The Brothers Karamazov. A number of readers in this group were really put off by this book. There is one chapter called The Grand Inquisitor that describes brutal inhumanity, the people being cruel and mean to other people, quite brutally. And it's all wrapped up in a religion. And what does it mean to be a believer? And it's something you need to experience for yourself in reading. I need to read that Grand Inquisitor chapter again to fully comprehend it. But it is a parable told by one of the brothers, Ivan. In the story, Ivan is a committed atheist, but he ponders what it means to be a believer. And in his parable, Jesus Christ returns to Spain somewhere in the 15th century, something like that. And one of the Grand Inquisitors says, "We don't need you for our religion." Did I get that right? Isn't that kind of odd that the central figure of a religion may not be needed by the religion anymore, according to Ivan's parable? Great chapter, even though a lot of people found it extraordinarily disturbing. I am continuing to read Collected Fictions by Jorge Luis Borges. I have just finished the volume inside this collection called The Maker. It is short vignettes. The most famous one in here is probably Borges and I, where it is a dialogue about Borges, the real author, Borges, talking about the fictional Borges that writes the stories. Or is it the fictional stories that create the real man? Sort of difficult to tell with Borges, but quite fascinating. And there's, as I said, short vignettes. And here is what Borges had to say about this collection of short vignettes. Of all the books I have set to press, none, I think, is as personal as this motley, disorganized anthology, precisely because it abounds in reflections and interpretations. Borges, a really curious and fascinating author. Okay, that is what I read for week 16. I did 1,438 pages. That comes to a total of 21,402 pages. And again, as I say, if my math is correct, I have completed 85.61% of my challenge. If I wore a placard, I would have one that says, "The end is nigh. Can I finish this challenge in 2 or 3 weeks?" I have a cunning plan to do that. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.